Hey y'all, it's Friday night and I just did a video telling y'all how to make this delicious grapefruit martini that has, basically it's granita, but it's Italian ice in it that is to die for. It is absolutely to die for. But I thought I'd take a minute and do a little part 5 for y'all because so many of y'all have reached out and said, tell us more about the home, tell us more about the home. So I asked several of y'all if y'all like a day in the life of my time at the home, and so y'all said y'all did, and so I'll do it. A lot of people want to know how I met my husband as well, and I will tell that story too. But tonight, while I have this little cocktail with y'all, I'll tell y'all a day in the life of the home, and it did not include a cocktail, I promise you. But anyway, let's just start with, like, say, Sunday night. Sunday night, you were assigned, this is important to the story, that's what I'm going to tell you. Sunday night, you'd be assigned a job, and you'd go into Central Hall, and you would look on this list, they would have it posted, and you'd find out what your job duty was going to be for the week, whether it was going to be the bathrooms in Whitehall, the bathrooms in Green Hall, whether cleaning the den or the lounge, dusting, vacuuming, all the things, or kitchen duty, or you could be a supervisor, which a supervisor, hall supervisor, was a girl of the home who would work with the house parents of the home and her helper, which was Miss Diane, their helper, which would have been Miss Diane, and you just kind of help them enforce the rules and all the things. So just know that everybody had a job to do, and every week you got a different job. But that's how we found out what our job was. That's kind of important to the story. That's why I started like that. So let's just say Monday morning you wake up, lights on, lights off. That's what it was called. So in the morning at 6 o'clock in the morning on Monday through and Sunday. Saturday was a little different, but who cares? But anyways, so lights on at 6 o'clock. So immediately when they would say lights on, the lights would come on, you'd get up, you put on your house coat, your house shoes, get your glasses, whatever you needed in your Bible, and you go out to the den and the lounge area that I told y'all about, and you sit down, and we had what they called devotion. And that was a Bible reading, a little Bible story. Brother Dub, would lead that. If you know about Brother Dub, I've told y'all he's the one that drank the friendship tea that I loved very much. And anyway, he would always lead the devotion. He would be funny and different, and it was a sweet time in the mornings to have our little devotion in the morning. And it usually lasts about 15 or 20 minutes. Might sing a song, just sitting around our house coats, anything. And then we would, after devotion, we go back to our rooms and we get dressed in our uniforms for school, clean our room, clean our area. We'd make our beds, put away our night clothes, make sure everything was perfect. And there's a reason for that. Everything had to be perfect. And when I say your bed had to be perfect, I don't think they were throwing the coin on it like they do in the military, but close. And so what would happen was when we would go to breakfast, then breakfast was served at, I think, 7. It's been 45 years ago, so I may be fudging a little bit on these times, but I think it was we had about an hour from the time we got up till it was time to be in the cafeteria for breakfast. And while we were in the cafeteria having breakfast, which lasted about 45 minutes, the hall supervisors would stay and with Miss Diane and the dorm parents or whatever, and they would go do inspection. And they would go from room to room and they would inspect what all you did that morning, get ready. They would check your bed to make sure it was made properly, and they would open up your drawers to make sure you didn't have anything you weren't supposed to have, but also to make sure that everything was folded exactly right. Everything on top of your part of the dresser, we shared dresser spaces, but was all perfect. And if they found anything wrong with any of that, if your bed wasn't perfect or if they found something wrinkled in a drawer, they did what they called ripping. And that would be where they would take the drawer and just dump it completely out on the floor. They would swipe everything off top of the dresser and just let it fall on the floor and break if you had perfume or something, which I didn't. But anyway, they would take your bed, and they wouldn't just undo the bed. They would take the whole mattress off. You would come back, and it would look like a scene out of a Taken movie where they had come through and like somebody had been robbed. Just insane. And so you certainly didn't want to get ripped, because if you did, you had a certain amount of time to get that back to where how it was supposed to be before school. And then it had to be re-inspected, everything before school, because if you didn't and you were late for school, then when you got to school, there's a whole nother situation happening for you over there if you're late for school. So it was a very bad thing to get ripped. Not only was it terrible to have your things just strewn about like that, it was also a situation where you only had a certain amount of time to get it back where it was supposed to be. And the first time I ever got ripped, and one of the only times I ever got ripped, because I was crazy about making sure it was perfect after this, when I talk about Miss Diane in one of the other parts, when I say she was mean, I'm telling you what, she was mean. And I have found out that she is still living. I have found out. And so I feel kind of bad about talking about her, but I hope she's not on social media. But anyway, it is what it is, y'all. But anyway, y'all know I have been through some pretty horrific abuses. Every one of them that you can think of in your mind right now, I've been through, okay? And my mother was, like I said, I think she had some mental issues and stuff, and so she would fly off the handle, and it would be a bad thing. But I don't think my mother was mean. I think she was just a broken person, and there was issues and stuff. But anyway, the first time I got ripped, I came in. I had only been at the home for about 2 weeks, and I was with my watcher, Joanne, and we came back over from breakfast, and you walk in, and you're just hoping, and I just knew I wouldn't be, because I did everything how I was supposed to be, but I was. It was horrific. And Miss Diane was standing there, and I guess because I was the new girl, she wanted to see how I respond to it. And listen, I'm a rule follower, as y'all know. I've told you I'm a rule follower. I'm not a rebel. I'm not a talkbacker. I'm none of those things. But in my mind, I'm 12 years old. I don't know what's just happened. I'm scared that it'll happen again. So I want to know, what did she find wrong? Was it the bed? Was it what? So I cannot do that again. And so I looked at her and I said, "Well, Miss Diane, what was wrong?" And she hauled back and slapped me right across the face. She has the distinct privilege. I was telling somebody earlier. She has the distinct privilege of being the only person walking on this earth that has ever slapped me in the face. That's so personal, and it's so painful, but it's also very personal to be slapped in the face. And even my mom didn't do that. And it almost knocked me off my feet. She hit me so hard. I remember my ear ringing, and and all I did was ask her what it was, just so I So I remember when she left, and my Joanne was helping me clean it all up, and I was crying, of course. And she said, "You don't ask questions. You do not ask questions. You just say yes, ma'am, and you just get it done, and then get it so we can get to school on time." So I never asked a question again after that, especially to her. But anyway, so we got it cleaned up, and when I was re-inspected, it was fine. I didn't get ripped again or hit again. But anyway, then you'd go to school. School started at 8 o'clock. School was school. We had ACE, we had PACEs. If you know, if you don't, you can look it up. PACEs are little workbooks. Math, social studies, English, and science, and you had to do 5 pages a day in each PACE. And when you did that, you were done. But you didn't get to leave the school. You just sat there. And, we didn't have teachers or anything. Like I said, in the other video, you could see that there were no teachers. There were just helpers. And if you had a question on something in your PACE, you would put this little flag up on you. We sat in desks. They were like what you would think of as a testing. Like if you go to a testing center where they have these. I'll put up some pictures, but these cubicle looking things you sat in, we called it our office. If you had a question, you put a flag or a pin up, and then somebody like Miss Diane would come over and say, "How can I help you?" And it's algebra, and she didn't know, and I didn't know, so I didn't learn it, so I couldn't tell you anything about algebra. So anyway, something like that. But anyway, school would get out at 3 o'clock, and then we would go back over to the home, and we had to do our job, which was, like, say I had green hall bath, and I go in there and clean that, and then then you get inspected after that. And we had some free time after that, and if the inspection went well and you didn't have to go re-clean or get paddled because it wasn't right, then you had some free time. And our free time consisted of sitting around in the lounge or the den area. We couldn't go in each other's rooms. Absolutely not. You were only allowed in your room. And when I was on watch and new, I couldn't even talk to anybody, but we could read the Bible, and we could we hook-rugged a lot. There were no TVs. There was no radio. There was no TV. There were no books other than the Bible. Maybe a Christian book or two around somewhere, but typically just the Bible. And just talking to your friends. We played jacks. We could play jacks. We did that a lot, and I was very good at it. And anyways, and we played that thing where you do this and to the sides and what's slapjack or whatever that was called. We did that. Those were and then we would go to after free time. Then it would be time to go to dinner, and then or supper. I think they called it supper. We go back over there and have supper. Then we come back and get ready for bed, and we had a little bit of free time before bed, and lights out. And lights out was at 8 o'clock, except on Saturdays we had lights out at 10 o'clock. So anyway, that's a day in the life. I threw that together pretty fast, but I'm about to run out of time, and I need to have a drink of my grapefruit martini before it melts. But that was a day in the life, and that was every single day of your life. We didn't really go outside. Sometimes on Sundays we played baseball or softball. I remember sometimes they let us do that, but we didn't spend much time outside at all. It was all inside, and that was it. That was the day of the life. It was very, very structured. Everything had to be a certain way, and I made sure that it was that way in my life. So anyway, love y'all.